Now today on Stitchless TV, I'm hoping to show you how to do a version of this lips bound buttonhole. Now the other day I was playing around with the whole idea of bound buttonholes, and whilst I like bound buttonholes, quite difficult to say, I do question why they need to be rectangles. So I had a little go at doing this one, which isn't perfect because it has a gap in the middle, because I forgot how Colleen G. Lee from the Fashion Sewing blog showed us how to do it. Now the back of mine looks like this because I was trying to make it easy for everybody to do. Right, so let's get on with learning how to make a lips bound buttonhole using old men ties for fabric. Now, before we do anything at all, this is very, very important. When you're doing any sort of bound buttonhole onto any fabric, can you make sure that you either use iron-on interfacing or stitching interfacing? I get mine from William G, which is an online company, but you can get interfacings from all sorts of places. Now I don't know if this is going to end up being a jacket, but I'm preparing it just in case it is. Once you've put interfacing on your garment, you need to think about the shape that you're going to use and the size that it's going to be. Now remember, there is going to be a seam allowance. So I've got all these different size lips here. Now what you do is you cut out a template of your lips. It helps me when I see them coloured in red. You've got to cut out a template of your lips. I've just cut it out of any old packaging. And then you also need to cut out a square, which is going to become the back. So I've got a template for the square back that the lips, fit into. Because even though this is a rough one, okay, I'll let you have a look. Because what happens is you're going to have the lips at the front, but at the back, this is how we're doing it, you're going to have a square. So decide what size they're going to be. So I don't want it that big. For me, it's between these two sizes, but I'm a bit worried about doing the really small one with you today in case it goes wrong. So I think I'm going for that one. So these are my lips that I'm going to be using. So the buttonhole will hopefully look something like that. Now, once you've decided upon the size of your lips, make sure you've got the matching square. That's the template for the back. So that's the template for the lips at the front, and that's the template for the size of the square at the back. All right, all makes sense in a minute. So you've done that, and then you need to cut a square of fabric that's going to become the facing for the front piece. Now something else that you need to cut out are pieces of fabric that are going to become the lips of the lips, really. So they'll be the bit that is equivalent to the lips inside your buttonhole. Now all these fabrics I've put interfacing on because it just makes them easier to work with. But if you're already using like a felted wool and you feel that it's stable enough or thick enough for such small pieces for the lips to go inside the lips, you might be fine. Right, well this is what we do. We get a piece of fabric, we align it with wherever we think we want it to go on our jacket or coat. Now I can really recommend that you press a line down the middle of that fabric because it just makes it easier to see where the centre is. So the next thing that you need to do is get your lips template, draw around it. So we've got our fabric right sides together. Draw around your lips template, and then you're basically just going to stitch with a straight stitch around that. Oh my goodness. But when you do that, you do realise that you're just doing it through one layer of the fabric. So you're doing it through the top layer of your jacket, so you won't have the facing attached. So can you see how I've stitched exactly on that line that I draw? Okay, so this is how it looks underneath. Now what I have to do is I have to cut out very carefully, leaving a small seam allowance and snipping into any points, so I can then turn it through the hole. So you really do snip up to, but not over the stitch line of any of those points. Now you've got to turn all of this so it goes through the hole, okay? And you've got to really press it. Now I find the most difficult bit to get really good is this point here. So I normally focus on that first. I even leave a pair of scissors in there, poking it out, and then press it with an iron. I'll try and show you. I also do tiny little snips into this curve here as well. And then you push everything through. So you need to start focusing on pressing this curve, or you can start at the top. I think I just need to get that sorted out first. So I'm going to focus on that bit. Now I've got a pair of scissors. I don't know if that's a good idea. So I get that bit out first, and I found it handy to just leave the scissors in there whilst I pressed it, and carefully adding the iron there. Now I'm going to turn it over. So let's start. I'm going to pull back all these bits until I can just see a little bit of the black, and then press it. Now you can just keep working and working on this. Whoops, that was really bad. You can just keep working and working on this until it starts to form the shape that you want. Now obviously if you're using some sort of pure wool, you're really big time. Going to have to protect that wool with some fabric so you don't iron straight onto the wool, because otherwise you're going to make it shiny. So I'm going to keep working the other side of the lips, and then I'll show you. Right, this is as good as I can get it at the moment. It was overhanging the fold of my facing for my jacket, so I've actually trimmed it back because I don't want it to go over there. So let's have a look. Right, it's not perfect, but I think it's good enough. That bit there is really, really important. Get your pieces which are due to become the lips of the lips. So they're going to look something like that. But in order for that to happen, you have to do something that I didn't do before. What you've got to do is, so you see how I've pressed them in half? We'll line up those half bits, and using a really big stitch on your machine, because you want to undo it later on, just stitch along that line. So what happens is they're temporarily attached together, so that's a way of ensuring that you don't get the gap that I got when I did that one. So look, we've stitched them together using our biggest stitch, which doesn't look very big actually, but it is. And then put them back so they're butted up together. Look, can you see? Probably. Now, before we move into putting our lips in the lips, we've got to do something that I nearly forgot. Right, before we do anything else, we need to do this. We need to fold the facing back, right sides together. Okay, and it's got to all be perfectly lined up, like really perfectly lined up. And then draw. So when you've done that, if you could line up your square and just draw around that square. Now I know this chalk's rubbish, okay? I'm going to sew on the inside of that square, okay? Now you need to lay some preferably like see-through muslin or organza or something. I haven't got anything like that. I've only got this netting. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew this square. But can you see that? Can you see where I've stitched? Now we've got to cut out this hole. So this is on the facing. And then it's the same thing as before. You make sure you've snipped right into those corners before turning all of this through. Now afterwards you can just rub off, whatever you do, the chalk. But I'm going to press all of this through the square like I did when I did the lips. So what that does is, it's a good way of keeping back those really tiny little turnings. Now if you aligned everything up properly, which can be tricky, it should, see, it's all flat, that's what you actually want. You want the corner of the lips to be at the edge of your square buttonhole. Right, but this is the inside of the jacket. Right, now we're ready for the lips of the lips. So do you remember we put the fabrics right sides together, we stitched down the centre, and then they're pressed like this. Now we're going to align that middle seam there with the corner of the lips. Okay, can you see that? Because we need it to be sort of centralised. So I'm lining it up, I'm going to fold it over. Now you can put a pin there or a bit of Bonder web. I'm going to do a little bit of Bonder web or Wonder web. And then I'll press that in place. And then line up the other side as well. And then you can put a bit of Bonder web in there, or just pin it, it's up to you. So that line has to line up with there. Right, I'm just going to trim off some of this because I don't want this. Now, keeping it all open and in place, it's up to you. Now you can hand sew this if you want, but I actually quite like the look of it being top stitched very close to the edge because I think it accentuates the actual lip shape. So that's what I'm going to do. But when you do it, I need black coloured thread on the top and red coloured thread underneath. Now do stick to that. Whatever colour you've used for your lips of your lips, use that colour thread, very important. I've got everything open out, look, everything's opened out. And I want a very small seam allowance. And do a nice top stitch. Now really take your time when you're doing this. So when you get to the corner, needle in, I'm sure you all know that rule. And then start coming up on the other side. Right, well I'll report back when I'm done. I actually couldn't see what I was doing. Next time definitely use an open-toed foot so I can see. Let me bring it closer for you. Well, it's not that bad, but what you need to see is the back. So when this is lined up properly, okay, it looks like that. Now I think it's fine to see the lips shape on here. Now I would just finish this off by hand because it's very difficult to get into that side there. But if you want to, one of the things that you could do is you can capture all that bulk there and stitch it, and then do the same for the bottom, but it's really tricky. So I would finish it by hand. Okay, I don't know if you need to see this, but before I'm going to sew it by hand, or whatever I'm doing, I'm putting Bond Web, and at the top, and then a good old press. And then that's ready for me to easily hand sew without it moving, because it's really important that it doesn't move. Now when you have hand sewed it or whatever in place, I have to say I am very, very tempted. If I could be totally sure, and I nearly can be, that if I was to top stitch this in black, if I could be totally sure that it would really beautifully frame the lips, I think I would just do it. Just top stitch it. But I'm too scared to at the moment. I'll leave it up to you to decide what to do with that. Anyway, do you remember we were using a really big stitch to hold the lips of the lips, I quite like saying that, together? Well, now we've got to unpick them. I think it looked great, wouldn't it, with a matching tie. If you just take a little bit of the fabric at the end of the tie just to make your buttonhole, and then you wear it for matching tie. Wow, that'd be so good. Anyway, I need to know a few things. First of all, do you think that I should top stitch the other side so it forms a box around the buttonhole on the right side? I really can't decide. And would you like to know how to do lips welt pockets, or have you figured it out from what I showed you? Comment below. Comments are good for my algorithms. Also, the other thing, oh yeah, if you like this sort of thing, I'm going to put my tie back on. If you like this sort of thing, really have a look at a playlist that I've got, and the title of it is called For Fashion Students and Sewing Enthusiasts. I've got some interesting stuff in there if you like this sort of thing. Anyway, see you again very soon. Thank you for watching. Sharing is good. Be good if you could share my videos, that is. I'll go now. Bye. Thank you. Bye.